we're going to talk about reputation. I think I want to start with community reputation and talk about what it would mean to have a reputation as a community. Because the idea of the sufficiency currency, as we're speaking about it, is that we share what we've got, right? And one of the things that I've noticed that works with share what you've got is reputation. So if I've got a spare room in my house and I know you're not going to steal from me and make a mess, I'm happy to have you as my guest. And I don't mind, but it's completely tied to reputation, right? I've got a spare room, and if I've got food, maybe if I've got spare food, I don't care who you are, I'm willing to give you my spare food. I can't use it. I don't want even a jerk to go hungry. But spare food doesn't really have a reputation, except that you're honest about actually being hungry, right? Like if a beggar on the street asks me for money and I offer them a sandwich and they don't want the sandwich, I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, got it. You don't need it, right? So there's a reputational element to sharing. So as I think about these communities, I'm interested in what are those elements? And I think Kevin and Tom, it would be interesting to hear what you have to say about that. Like what if you were, let's say you were an electricity generating organization and there were a number of eco-villages or permacultures or towns or whatever around you, let's say whatever it is, communities, whatever these communities meant, what would be some of the elements that you'd say, I'm willing to put you into our cooperative as long, knowing that you're also providing what you have, which might be food, or it might be, health services, or it might be education, right? Let's say, I'm willing to include you in our energy services as long as I know this, this, and this about you. Like, what would those things be?
Have I kept my promises in the past?
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. That's if I keep my promises. Well, it's not quite even keeping the promises. If I keep the promises and when I break them, which I will on occasions, there is a good excuse. That still relies upon, that still says that I've kept my promise.
So that's like if there was, let's say, let's call it a neighborhood, as long as you knew that that neighborhood, when they entered into agreements, had kept their agreements or at least made up for any breaches of the agreements over a certain period of time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unless there was a good reason not to keep the promise.
Because, for example, if you're talking about a community, right, one of the values you might want to know is, what do they do with the energy I pool to them? Are they taking a lot more energy for the king's palace than the peasants' little huts, right? Is everybody getting the energy as much as they need it? Are they lighting a lot of lights at night and wasting energy? Are they, are they recycling? Like those are things that you might, what is the distribution of goods within the community, for example? That might be a reputation you cared about. And what is their, renewability or regenerative footprint? That might also be something, I don't know, are those things that you would want to care about as well?
Look, I put up the reference to Promise Theory book. But I think it's worthwhile just reading out what it says. Promise theory bridges the worlds of semantics and dynamics to describe interactions between autonomous agencies within a system. It provides a semi-formal language for modelling intent and its outcomes, which results in a chemistry for cooperative behaviour. What's really nice about promise theory is that you expect promises to be broken. Right, you design so that the promises, that the promises are going to be broken because it's inevitable. But what you do is you try and, when a promise gets broken, you try and figure out what you're going to do when it actually happens, and you have a mechanism for being able to sort out what goes wrong and fix it when it does go wrong. And so it becomes very much a learning process that you're developing, because you fix up problems when they occur, but you formalize them so that you remember what you've done so that you can do it again in the future.
If they don't have a system by which they keep track of their contracts, handle their promises, and deal with dispute, then we can't work with them. So they have to have some sort of formal governance system in place that we can refer to. You know, if you're in a community that doesn't share their intellectual property with you, that might be a no. That's a reputation element that we'd want to know. To what degree do they share their intellectual property freely, particularly when these are public goods? Yeah, that's another reputation element. Diet, are you?
It is my overview that the reputation is the abstraction, that's something making it exactly the things that we already have in our country as a three forces. Legislative, it means ruling, policing, and judging. It means who rules the reputation? It is the community. It means what is reputation? If you are going to have a reputation for car sharing, who is gonna receive the better reputation? If you are a careful driver, if you make the car fixed, all the rules around driving and taking care of car is gonna be the rule and condition of reputation. It means ruling, number one. Second one, policing. Who is gonna take care of reputation? And it is the beauty. Reputation is personal. I need to take care of my reputation, otherwise it's gonna be vanished. So, and the things that Kevin mentioned about the consequences for ignoring reputation or promise, if you are gonna ignore your promise, what is the consequences? You are gonna lose your reputation. It means the system based on the reputation system, it means I need to take care of my reputation. I need to take care of my promise. It means the second side, that right now we have a police. I'm gonna be my police. The third one, the consequences, it means the judging system. What happened if I'm gonna mispromise? What happened if I'm gonna lose my promise? Again, the community is gonna make a decision. It means right now, these three sections of power, ruling, policing, and judging, it is the up to down based on the reputation. It means the reputation itself, it is kind of meaning it's going to be bottom to up, all these three kind of topic.
You could say, okay, look, if you have this reputation score, and that could be a combination of a number of things, this is, you know, you get electricity free, or you get food free, or whatever, right? And then, but if you have this reputation score, we charge you differently.
I have a question. Do you think the reputation can be kind of medium of exchange? It means we need to give reputation and receive electricity, bread, cola.
I think reputation has, I think it's, you can't give away your reputation to someone, right? But you could have something that connected your reputation to a certain level of service, right? It's more like if your reputation is this high, you get this level of service, and if your reputation is that high, you get that level of service, but you don't give it away. It's not exactly reciprocity like you were talking about, like, hey, we've got a problem, right? Emmanuel says, I've got a limited amount of electricity, and Will says, I've got a limited amount of, you know, whatever, loaves of bread, right? You look at what's going on the dashboard and you're like, holy cow, we're going to be short grains, or we're going to be short electricity, or we're going to be whatever it is. What am I going to do as a community or as an individual to pitch in? And you see this all the time, right? If somebody's house burned down, right? Like right now, these guys, some of their apartments burned down. I'm going to go there next week and see what happened. Does the community pitch in? Does the Eco Village you know, organization pitch in? Do I pitch in just because I like them? Like, what happens when right? And with this whole thing with COVID, right? COVID happened, like we had a lockdown and some of the families couldn't cook, so everybody had to cook more. And who didn't? You know, who didn't do more extra kitchen duty, right? And I think that that's where I see the power of the sufficiency currency, and what I call the capacity is where you have 5 communities instead of one community saying our apartments burned down, 5 communities going, oh my goodness, those apartments burned down. Let's all go over there for a week, a work week, and fix it up. And then you get a reputation as somebody who helped solve that problem or helps solve problems on a regular basis. Because, you know, as soon as Emmanuel started talking about this problem, I thought, well, why does he think it's his problem instead of sitting down with the community and all the people who want to get electricity and saying, hey, we made this decision to use this energy source that's not unlimited. What do we do about it? And then maybe somebody says, hey, it turns out I make a lot of wood chips. Could wood chips help? Or, you know, whatever it is, I have a lot of banana peels. Can we use banana peels? And he's like, no, we can't use banana peels, but we can use walnut, you know, like shells. And says, oh, well, I've got walnut shells, right? Like, it's one of those things, like if they all sat down and didn't see it as your problem, and then somebody who's very even disabled could have ideas.
Can I raise something that's bothering me? And I guess it actually builds on the previous comment, which is even before that, why do you even want to measure it? Because I'm quite concerned about this question of why reputation is even something that we would want to measure. I'm not saying you would never want to, but I just think there could be different reasons and for wanting to do it. And even if your intentions are entirely, you know, well-intentioned, it's an area which is really fraught. Your implementation can be prone to manipulation and gaming, and is it even a good idea to go there? What's the reason for it all, I guess? Reputation is a natural thing, and it's intangible and it's nebulous. It exists inside my head in a range of conscious and unconscious ways, and it exists in everyone else's heads in a range of conscious and unconscious ways. Grace, going back to Grace's example, there's the other community who, I can't remember the exact disaster, but befell them and they needed help. It was help in rebuilding. Actually, there was a decision-making process, and implicitly or explicitly in that decision-making process was an assessment of the reputation of the community group, i.e., are they worthy of our assistance? Do they hold a reputation in our esteem which is high enough for us to judge that we should go and help them? So I think we need to acknowledge that when you come up with systems for reputation, you're drawing that out and you're trying to systematize it and bring metrics to it. It's always there.
It's always there. Yeah, it is always there, and it's always natural. And then there's always, you can expose or not expose certain things about yourself, right? And so I drove through here in my little rented car, and I paid cash at all the tolls. I'm violating the no travel thing, paying cash at the tolls. I'm not going to take out my credit card, right? I'm trying to hide certain things about my reputation. And I've got a rental car, not an owned car. And, you know, like they could look me up, but the rental car company is probably going to protect my identity. So I'm probably, you know, like that. So we hide certain things about our reputation as well. So, I mean, I imagine it in a couple of potential ways. And so we're not talking about the technical aspects of it here, but just from the technical aspects, I imagine a couple of different things. One, potentially as individuals, I would imagine it would be like a wallet, right? And just like when you go into a pub, you have to show you're 21. It's like, listen, I'm coming to your community. I want to stay for 3 nights. And you have to say, well, I need to see that your reputation score on these 3 aspects. And either you have to actually show it and be visible about it, or the computer does it automatically. And how I imagine the computer doing it in between communities, because it's really hard. You're not going to make these decisions. Like I imagine this being a whole AI system, and that as a community, you can say, okay, listen, we're willing to work with other communities that are, they could be spiritual, but not cult-like, which, you know, there's a scale for, like, this is a cult, it takes all your money away from you, and this is just a spiritual community, they meditate once a week together, you know, like there could be a scale. And I'm willing to share with communities that are within this proximity, because otherwise there's, you know, the carbon footprint's too high. And I'm willing to share with, you know, whatever it is, and you put in your things, like it's a dating service, right? You say, if it's within this, you know, these framework, match me, and I'm willing to share with them. and they're willing to share with me. And then when you go in and you say, okay, I'm going to look at the pool of, you know, energy providers that I could choose from and the pool of food providers that I could choose from, I'm only going to see the pool of people that matched with me because they thought I was reputable enough, and the computer could kind of almost do that blindly. And you might be able to drill down and see, you know, well, why did you give them that rating? And it says, oh, well, they've got compostable toilets, and, you know, they don't have any street lights, and whatever it is. And they say that's why their rating looks like that. But you would upfront define what you're willing to do and who you are, and then the reputation over time would be matched. So like those are the kinds of technical solutions, like not easy, but they're not beyond our current state of technology. But what I did want to talk about this vouching, because the reputation is given by something, right? Somebody says I'm reputable. Somebody says I pitched in. Somebody says that I was good at something, right? And in reality, when we think about reputation, right? If I said Will's a good guy, he's going to be a great guest speaker, and he comes as a guest speaker to my currency workshop, as he did, and then he turns out to suck, that hurts my reputation, right? And if he turns out great, it improves my reputation. Oh, Grace brings great guest speakers, or Grace brings guest speakers that she thinks are great, but she has bad judgment about what a good guest speaker is, right? So it's when you give a vouch, it says something about you. And that's something our current reputation systems are really bad at. And there's this really big problem with them today. So I was telling you about this guy who did great work, but I would never work with him again, okay? And I know how Upwork works. And if I give him a bad score, it's going to affect him for a long time. So I gave him a pretty good score, even though I would never in my life work with him again.
When you're vouching to bring someone else into a group, what are you actually saying? You're actually saying, I am of the belief that that person has these characteristics, and therefore you should all give them the benefit of the doubt. It comes full circle for me, because at the very beginning I was thinking about these bringing people into the communities. The principle that I would like to think that we are developing at Pre-Power is to say, you start with an assumed level of reputation. We vouch other people in, and then the community, it's almost like you've got to lose your reputation as opposed to earn the reputation because you've been vouched in. Now, if you don't have a vouching in system, perhaps you should have a system where you have to earn it.
Definitely are situations where you have to be voted off the island. Everybody's in until you get voted out. There's definitely situations like that. That's actually a very common situation in human society. We trust you until you screw it up. And also there's levels of, and some of it has to do with risk, right? You know, you have to build you get trusted with this. Everybody gets trusted at this level. You can go up or down with what you get trusted with. So some of it has to do with risk. And again, some of it just has to do with, like I said at the beginning, right? If I have extra food, I'm willing to give it to any human being that's hungry. I don't have a condition on that. But if I have a place to stay in my house or a car to lend, there's going to be a lot more conditions.